Talking Paranormal.
This week I'm joined by Sarah from Whispering Woods podcast. Now you may recognise Sarah's voice from our intro because you were kind enough to do me that little favour, your Bristolian accent. So Sarah, anyway, are you all right?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
Good. Just tell us a little bit about your podcast and who you are.
Yeah, so it's the Whispering Woods, and I do it with my 12-year-old son, Tobie. I try and tell him spooky stories to get him scared.
Yeah.
I do tell him spooky stories, but he's quite unfazed by it all, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think he's used to TikTok and all sorts of things now. So yeah, the stories don't really scare him. But saying that, one night he did jump a mile because my speaker went off by itself and I was fast asleep. So he screamed and he was crying. So I think they must be doing something.
Yeah. Well, he says he watches horror films and stuff, and it's like, obviously loves it, doesn't he?
He does. He's like his mum, because I've always been the same.
Yeah.
I love it.
So how did this podcast come about? What was the genesis of that?
Well, because I'd listened to podcasts before years actually, but I never knew there was such a thing as like a paranormal podcast. I'd listened to the usual ones like Serial, those sort of what do they call them?
Like episodic ones.
Yeah, and when it's like investigative journalism and stuff like that. And then during lockdown, I came across the podcast called Spooked.
Okay.
And because at the time I couldn't read, I was really anxious and I couldn't read a book. And I used to read loads. So I started listening every night because I live here with just the kids. My partner lives down in another village. So I was just kind of here on my own with them, and I needed something to do, really. So I started listening to the podcast in bed, and I loved it. It was great, and then since then I came across other podcasts, and I just thought I want to give this a go. Yeah.
So no background in it. You just thought, I'm doing that.
Yeah, good on you.
Yeah. Good. And obviously I heard your trailer, and immediately, because it was you and your son, and I'm so close to my son, I thought, that would be awesome. But unfortunately, my son's not really into it as I am. But straight away I thought, I'm going to message this podcast and say good luck.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciated that at the time as well.
Well, you've not started, but now it's going from strength to strength, isn't it?
Yeah, it's going really well. Really well.
What's your recording situation? Do you do a few at a time or one a week?
I try to, but when you know how they say about working with kids, it's that situation. So he's not actually on this week's episode because he's got a stomach bug.
Yeah, I heard.
Yeah, and he's just been he's out at the moment, but he came back and threw up and then went out again, as they do. So he was a bit rough, but then he sort of heard the playback of just the beginning and his little face. He was disappointed. I could tell. But he'll be back on again next week, hopefully.
What do his friends think of it? Did he get any feedback?
It's funny actually, because they used to take the mickey out of him first of all, and he didn't know how to handle it. So it was a good lesson for him when I sort of said, you've not got to worry about, you've got to go through life not worrying about what other people think about what you're doing, so he's more like it now. And actually he had a friend here earlier, and he was sort of, he wasn't boasting, but he was sort of like, we've got this podcast now. So he's getting more used to it.
That's good. like I say to you, I look forward to you having longer discussions about it, because he's still learning, isn't he? Everything, a lot of things. You're like, he's like, what's a cryptid?
Yeah.
And you're like just beginning to get him into it, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I look forward to episode 100 when he's like, okay, I've got a cryptid for you, Mum. You know?
Yeah. And he can start telling me stories, and he's got the confidence, and that'd be great.
Yeah.
And here he is, actually. Come and say a quick hello.
Hello.
Hey, man, how you doing?
How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, you feeling all right?
Yeah, I'm alright.
Saying about your sick plug.
Yeah.
All right. So do you want to? Sorry, he's just coming through.
All right.
You getting your dinner, are you?
So, do you have stories from your youth? You seem to have some on the podcast, but what experiences have you had in your life?
A few, really. Nothing major. If I sort of go back from the beginning, when my nan died when I was about 7, and there was one occasion where I've got 2 sisters, and as you can imagine, 3 sisters together, there was a lot of arguing going on.
Yeah.
We're quite close in age, and there was one argument in particular with my older sister, and all of a sudden we felt this whoosh, that's the only way I know how to describe it, came over us, and we both sort of stopped arguing, and my sister said, that smelt like Nan, and we were both convinced that she'd come to tell us to stop arguing, because we felt her presence and like her smell and everything like that, and we stopped arguing, so it worked.
Yeah, that's great.
And then years later, when I was probably 16, 17, we had a group of friends, my tribe at the time.
Yeah.
And there was one friend in particular, Jason. We were both really into paranormal and horror films. And we went out with each other for a little while, but we were really good friends. And then in our 20s, he died, but it was a group of friends who died on a helicopter.
Oh, wow.
Really unexpectedly. And when I found out the news, I was devastated. It was on the news, and not realizing it was people that I knew. I was getting my hair done at the time, and I was sort of like, oh, how terrible.
Yeah.
And then found out it was really close friends. And I went to sleep that night, and previously we joked about, I'll haunt you, and this kind of stuff. And I saw him, and he came to my bed, and I went, no, don't go away, please, I'm scared. and he disappeared. But then when I had Maisie, my first child, she was the daughter of his best friend, and I was in hospital, and Jason, he came up to the little cot, the plastic cot thing they put the babies in after she was born, and said hello, and then went away again. So I mean, they could have been dreams, but it's a really odd time for somebody to be on your mind, when you've just had a baby and you're so that was a really odd experience. And various other bits, when I said on the podcast when I was having the fag with my sister, and we could hear this whispering up in the woods. And it's so odd things like that have happened. And then especially with the goblin.
Yes.
Yes. And that was with Maisie. And we'd got home, and actually before that happened, there was another unusual occurrence where I'd taken her out in the pram for the first time, and where we lived, there's a big main road, and then there is a kind of a big estate park that runs parallel. And I was walking on the pavement by the main road, and then as I got parallel to where my nan is, her grave is, this voice said, get off the road and go through this gap in the hedge, which I did, and carried on walking with the pram. And just as reached the entrance to this estate, there was a crash, which was, really sort of frightened me, because it was obviously it's the first time I'd taken her out.
Yeah.
And that kind of, I don't know if that brought on, because I had really bad sort of postnatal depression.
Mm-hmm.
I think I probably would have got it anyway, but I think that really brought it on, because it was like the first time I'd taken her out, and and then that's when the goblins started coming for his visits.
There's a lot to unpack here.
Yes.
I've wrote down crash because guardian angels was something I was going to actually ask you about. So we'll get back to that. And goblin, definitely, because people might not have heard that. I've heard that.
Yeah.
But let's go back to the appearance of your friend when he came to the bottom of your bed. And can you describe see-through, the same age, older? What was the details that you remember?
Same age. And he used to wear these checked kind of shirts, a bit like lumberjack.
Yeah.
At the time, because it would have been in the 90s.
90s, yeah.
And he had just jeans and the same check shirt on. Looked the same age as I remembered him. He wasn't see-through. Solid. Yeah. It wasn't. It wasn't sort of wispy, or it was just sort of solid and full body. And
Was the room bright? Don't you remember?
No, I don't. It's
you were in bed.
I was in bed, and I can't remember. I might have had like a landing light on. I really can't remember at the time. It was kind of a strange thing, because I just knew he was there, and I saw him. Can't really remember what the room was like or anything else. It's just become a distant, because how long ago is it now? I'm 48, and it was when I was about 24, so it's quite 25 years ago or so. So quite some time ago. Yeah.
Well, that's more than I've seen.
Right.
I haven't seen a full-bodied, and like a person, but that's great immediately. So the goblin, then. Tell us about the goblin for people who don't know.
Oh, horrifying. So it started with a very vivid dream. And I'd left a bit out on our podcast, actually, so I'll mention it on this chat, because it's sort of whether it was age appropriate. So I had this dream that this goblin was coming after my daughter, and I kept trying to stop him, and I was ringing the police, and they couldn't do anything about it. And you know how dreams are a bit distorted, so he was coming through the air vents, which he wouldn't have been able to, but that's the way he was coming in. And he was relentless, and no matter what I did, I couldn't get rid of him. And then sort of eventually it wasn't like he gave up. It was like, okay, I'm going to go for the next best thing. So in the dream, he beckoned John over, which is Maisie's dad, and he had a car, and he opened up the boot, and it was full of alcohol, and John went with him. Now, at the time, John didn't really drink, but since he died of alcoholism.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that's the bit I left out in the podcast, because it was just, and I've only just actually told Maisie that part of what happened. And then it was like Freddy Krueger. It slipped into my waking hours. So he was, I could like swear that I heard John coming up the stairs in the flat, and we'd put it was like a one up and one down. So I had a little staircase that went up, and we had laminate flooring on it. So you could really hear the clacking, you know. And I could hear somebody come up, and I just thought it's John, didn't really pay much attention. And then nobody came into the living room. So I was sort of, you know, and then John did come in, and I sort of said, did you come back in earlier and go out? And he was like, no, I've been next door. And then one of her baby balloons just disappeared, completely disappeared. Couldn't find it anywhere. Don't know where it went. You know, I kept one of them because as it released the, what's it called?
The helium.
The gas. Helium. I was going to say methane. Wrong. I kept them, you know, and then it was just gone. It was completely gone. And then years later, I was having a bit of a rough time, and Rog got me a red heart balloon, and I brought it home, and it followed me everywhere I went. And I don't mean that it was just, once. It followed me all through the house, up and down the stairs. It would come over, because in the end, Roger's actually here, but I called him and said, you need to come and see this, because this balloon is following me, and I think that it's the goblin, and it's got something to do with the goblin, and especially because of that association with balloons, and you know. And he came up with me, didn't you? And it followed me up to the bedroom, and actually it was like it was walking in behind me. Now I don't know if there's some kind of slipstream, you know, I don't know, but it was just more than that. It would, and then when I came back downstairs and sat down, it came, hovered right by me, and then stopped. It was so bizarre.
You would have to say, skeptically, it's static, because they get static, don't they?
Yeah.
Or one of your hairs had become attached to it. But
this went on for days.
Right.
You know, otherwise I'd agree. And it wouldn't follow anybody else around the house, only me.
Well, that's like, yeah.
It was really like, because you came up with me once, didn't you, upstairs, and it just followed me. And it went on for a few days, and exactly the same thing happened. The balloon disappeared, and I've never seen it since. Not deflated anywhere. It's just disappeared.
Okay, so without any, you don't have to think skeptically. What would your thought jump to? A meaning, or? I
just straight away went to the goblin. I was like, it's after me again, you know. Well, and admittedly, I was drinking.
Yeah.
I was drinking heavily at the time,
right.
As well. So I've since quit, and I haven't drunk for years. But I don't know. It was just really strange.
Yeah.
You know? So whether it was, maybe it wasn't a goblin. Maybe it was a guardian angel pretending to be a goblin to frighten me enough to stop drinking.
But didn't you see the goblin, and didn't someone else in your?
Yes, yeah. Because he sort of came out of a dream. Yeah. I would see him out of the corner of my eye and stuff like that. And my friend used to have to come into the flat and check under the bed and everywhere before I would even come back in. I was that petrified. And then when George was little, that's the 17-year-old, my middle child.
Yeah.
He had a dream and said that this creature, goblin, was staring at him in his bed, looking down on him, and it would have been, because he was tiny, so it would have been bigger than him. So the similarity was there. And
you'd said on your podcast that it wasn't like you a son who was old enough for you to have had a chat with about it, and in his mind it was a baby or a young toddler.
Yeah, he was tiny. He was probably about 3, and I'd not told them about, you know, I've only just told Tobie, and he's 12, so I wouldn't have wanted to frighten them, you know. So yeah, it was bizarre.
But you're out of the grips of that now.
touch words.
Yeah.
Touch words.
So, do you have any faith?
I'm pagan.
Okay.
So I do have a spirit, I'm very spiritual.
Yeah.
And so I just think that, we're all part of one system, basically. We're all connected and interconnected, and it's energy, and, and that's kind of my belief system, really.
Yeah. Do you practice any paganism? I don't know.
A little. Yeah.
I don't know what that involves. I don't know what I mean.
It's like most religions or belief systems where, you pray, but it's called something else. It's spell work. But it's all to a higher being, whether that's, a god or a goddess, or so there are so many similarities between religions and belief systems. It's just like the same thing, different name, Whereas paganism is more sort of earth related generally.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth in that. I mean, energy is the cornerstone of every religion, isn't it? And intention, good over bad. And if I've learned anything through our investigating, it's your intention what is the first thing that alters the investigation, and you go in with respect and stuff. So the future of your podcast, is that going to entail you and Tobie walking around cemeteries with equipment one day, or
Yeah, I think so, definitely. I was talking about this the other day to a colleague, and I think eventually we will take some of that on. I mean, I don't know a lot about it, to be honest. I mean, I know about EVP, but I don't know a lot about the equipment, and we've dabbled. But I haven't got anything sophisticated,
No. So there's no plans yet for a Ouija board being broken out?
Oh, I'm not sure about a Ouija board.
Okay. All right.
They do frighten me. I've had an experience with one before.
The kid?
Yeah, as you do.
That's good. Yeah. Sounds like Tobie will be making his own at an early age. He's so into it.
I'm surprised he hasn't. Well, he may have done, but he probably wouldn't tell me.
So you read a lot of stories out, obviously, and do you spend a lot of time just looking online? Is that your?
I mean, I do all sorts. So I'm a great fan of paranormal programs. So I love Paranormal Witness and Haunted, all of those type of programs. I like some of the paranormal sort of investigation ones. It depends which ones they are. I read loads. I watch loads of movies. I'm a bit of a movie freak, to be honest. Read all sorts, so a bit of everything.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. So cryptids, you've done a few on your show.
Yep.
What's your thoughts? Do you think there are such things?
I really do believe in Bigfoot.
Yeah.
I do.
I entered the Bigfoot world recently by a friend who's really into it, and so that's made my ears prick up whenever I hear a Bigfoot story or whatever. I always thought there was one. Now that I realise they're everywhere, it's a bit more okay.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, your thoughts.
Yeah, I there's so much consistency between people's stories about what happens if they see Bigfoot, and I think I watched a really good, I don't know if you've seen it on Netflix, Unexplained Mysteries. The Bigfoot one.
Oh, yeah. It's
so good.
Yeah. that hair that they found, and it was like they didn't know what it was. Yeah. But
So
we were saying in our team, when that woman said one kept coming to her trailer, it's like, well, if it kept coming back, why didn't you take any photos of it?
Yeah. Yeah.
So like, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's and I do, because he sort of touched on this kind of coming from another realm.
Yeah.
With lights associated to them, and I do think that a lot of beings come from, like I said on the podcast about demons.
Yeah.
I don't believe them in the biblical sense. I think it's an entity, you know, that comes through from somewhere. It's found out how to get a crossover, and they do.
Yeah, there's catch-all names, and I think demon is something for a bad thing worse than a spirit, generally speaking.
Yeah.
And I also think that the way that they come through is often described as portal, and I can understand that we all get what that means, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I also agree with that I don't believe demon in the biblical sense, but if the spirits do say demon to us on the board and stuff. But I don't. Again, I need to really clarify with them, what do you mean by that? That's my next step.
Yeah.
You know, because coming through a Ouija board, we get demons so many times, and it's not. Do you know what I mean? It's just to frighten us or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's my next answer to get. But yeah, I know what you mean. The way that quantum mechanics in science has shown that all realities happen at once. You know, and that it must be like layers, like intermingled. And so it must be so easy for them to pass to
over,
to come in and out. Yeah, I've even heard about Bigfoot just disappearing. You know, you turn around and it was there, and then it's not. So yeah, and ghosts, obviously, they say that they're not really trapped in here. They come and go. They're visiting. You know, the only ones who don't pass over are of the mindset that they can't pass over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's probably got a lot of truth to it, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I do think that there may be something in the trauma aspect, that if you had a traumatic death, that you're probably quite shocked and you know, not realizing that you've passed on.
Yeah, we've definitely had at least a couple of spirits who have said, "Do you realize you're dead?" And the glass has gone crazy. Like, what? You know? Yeah. Like, okay, you didn't know, which makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And you're like, why is everyone in my house?
Yeah, exactly. I'd be throwing a few things about. I'd be a poltergeist.
Yeah.
What are you doing in here?
Yeah. So, UFOs?
Yeah, most definitely. As a child, I was really into UFOs and used to watch the skies and would forever watch Close Encounters of the Third Kind, you know, with the mashed potato. But yeah, I did have only one that really stands out. One sighting was when I was in my back garden looking up at the stars, having a fag. And these two lights were separate from each other, but they came together and they started dancing together and then just shot up really quickly out of sight. And it was just like, what did I just see? What the hell was that? Yeah, really cool.
Really cool, yeah, because that doesn't sound like aircraft.
No, the way they moved together, and it wasn't like it was a light source coming from the ground, because there were no trails. So it was just really, and the way that they shot off and the way they moved and synchronized together, it was nothing like a regular aircraft at all.
Yeah, well, we live up in Yorkshire, and I remember my grandma telling me that she'd looked out over the night sky one evening, and she talked about, I can't remember if it was one or many, but them spinning around and then whizzing off.
Yeah.
And I never knew at the time whether she was just trying to entertain her grandchild, who she knew was into the paranormal. But now, years later, I'm like, maybe she was right, because these, like your story then just tallies up with hers. And you know, I mean, I've laid on my back in the road as a kid and been like, "Take me now, then, if you are there," you know. But didn't.
Oh,
But yeah, I'm starting
I
to.
used to disappear when I was about sort of 13, 14. I used to have terrible recurring nightmares. My mum would come in my room and it was something about aliens and don't let them take me and stuff. And it happened on a few occasions that my friend lived down the road and I'd call for her so that we could go to the youth club, local youth club. And apparently I'd be really late and she'd ring my mum and say, has Sarah left yet? And mum would be like, yeah, she left ages ago. And I wouldn't turn up for an hour. So I'd have these missing kind of bits of time that I have no idea. I just thought I was walking down the road, but apparently I'd be like an hour or two late, which was really strange.
Yeah, we've had someone mention that on the podcast recently about driving somewhere via sat-nav, and yet they got there at the complete wrong time, even though they went the fastest route.
Right, wow.
Yeah, so it's weird. I mean, I don't know if you've ever had the feeling that the universe is talking to you, because that's something I've witnessed over the past maybe 5 years, that I'd be going somewhere that was always open. I used to do a little radio show for local radio, and I thought, I'll go and edit my show now. And I heard this voice say, just ring to see whether they're open. Or a thought crossed my mind, just ring to see if they're open. And I thought, well, why wouldn't they be? What do you mean? Like, why wouldn't they be open? I set off and it was shut. And I was like, that voice said to me, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah, that was one of the first moments, yeah. And I've started to notice them more, though. I've started to, I'll be leaving the house and something will make me go back and check that I've got everything. And I didn't have everything.
Yeah. So do you think you're having it more because you're listening more?
Yeah.
Paying more attention.
These sort of debates, yeah. Yeah, I think I'm watching paranormal stuff more and more. But now that I'm aware these things can happen, obviously I'm just like, I don't question it. I'm like, okay, I'll go with it. I will go and have another check, even though I think I've got all my work things, and I'll go and realise you haven't got your dinner. You didn't take your dinner out of the fridge, and I'll literally go, thank you. You know?
I do think the more that you do research and delve into this, the more you're open to it. You know, the more that you see, like for instance, I did talk about it on the podcast as well about there was a figure at the doorbell, you know, the video bell.
Jeez, I wanted to ask you about that.
That was it was just weird.
Yeah.
Weird. And I think it's you open yourself up to it. And I just think that maybe the energies are then become more aware of it, that you're opening up to it, you know. And then I haven't actually, because I did have a little bit more that happened, and I didn't talk about it on this week's podcast because Tobie wasn't there. But I heard George come in. I was up in bed, and I'm conscious of, you know, waiting to hear him come in. So I heard him come in and walk through the living room. I thought, he's getting something to eat. And then my phone rang. And it was George saying, Mum, the bus hasn't turned up. So I'd like, yeah. It's like, what the hell was that downstairs then, you know? That was, quite creepy, but nothing else has happened since.
So quickly go over for the people who didn't listen to the podcast about the ring thing.
Yes, sorry. I was up in bed. Now, I wanted to check the ring to see if George had come home, because I kind of just flick on, right, and then I know I can sleep okay. And as I opened it up, there was an image of a woman that I didn't recognise, and she sort of had her hand out pointing to the next door neighbour, white t-shirt and long brown hair. So I went back through all of the events on the Ring app, and there was no sign of it.
Yeah, that is bizarre.
Really bizarre. I went back through and I thought, well, it didn't look like Maisie, but I thought maybe it was just the way she was stood, or maybe it was her friend prestige who'd come up as well, and it wasn't any of them. And yeah, it was really strange.
So I think there's going to be more to that story eventually. It sounds like they were pointing you to next door.
It was really weird.
Down the street. Down the
Down
street.
the road. Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's going to be more to that. I hope.
Yeah, me too.
That is a freaky one. Do you think you have a sensitivity beyond normal?
I would like to think I have, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. I'm the opposite.
You know?
I'm the opposite. I wouldn't want it.
I wouldn't want to see too much, you know.
I only wouldn't want it because I know that mediums get so much. Well, it's 24/7 of prove it, then prove it. Because I know I like them, and it's just like, and they're thinking, am I crazy? You know, they never really know themselves. I just wouldn't want that.
No. Yeah, that's a good point. I think I just wanted to have that ability. You know, I don't think I particularly have. I think, like I've said, the more you delve into the paranormal, the more you do open up yourself to it, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm quite good at ignoring myself as well. So it's rather you know, which I'm doing less of lately because of the reading and the research.
Yeah. I over the past 2 days, I've had 2 significant bangs in my house. One on a door, the other side of the camera, which only goes a few steps down into, not even a cellar, it only goes 3 steps down to the meters, gas meters or whatever.
Yeah.
But I do get reverberation from the road outside as people walk over grates and stuff. I get a bit of a doom doom as bikes go over it and stuff.
Yeah, I know.
But yeah, I got like a bang on that door earlier, and I've had one earlier the day before elsewhere in the house. Like it's always in another room. I hear it was my son's something in his bedroom fell over. Right. And I thought, well, the heating's been on this morning, and then it just gone off. So there's a heating and cooling element going on. But it was loud, and among the silence, you hear this bang. And I'm like the opposite now. I'm like, what? You know what I mean? I'm listening.
Is that all you got?
I'm like, dude, what? What am I supposed to do with that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you want to talk to me, talk to me. But it's not that. I'm the opposite of scared. I'm like, well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So yeah, I'm always talking to the house.
Oh. So do you think? So do you think your house is haunted?
No, not at all. I don't.
No.
I think it's a safe space, and I like to keep it that way. I would never do a board in my house, especially because my son's here half the week.
Yeah.
I think you need to have a safe zone. And however, I have been visited by spirits before. A certain spirit in particular we met in York who has visited all the team in a menacing-ish way. Turns out we're friends with him now. It's bizarre. But yeah, I have heard things go off. My equipment's gone off. For example, it's piled up in my bedroom and that will go off in the middle of the night. Or Jacob's spare toys that I'm taking to charities and stuff are in my bedroom. And they'll, like 3 of them will go off in the middle of the night. Like the toys are settling or something's made them go off. Yeah. And in the middle of the night, again, I'm like, shut up. Do you know what I mean? Like, we spend all those hours on a Ouija board waiting for something to happen, and now you decide.
A bit of a delayed response, yeah.
Like, pick a time. So, yeah, then we'd go on the board, and I would say, did you come to my house the other night? Yeah, I did. What did you do? Toys. You know, and you're like, okay, I've not told everyone what happened. Things like that. So, yeah, I think they do visit me, but generally speaking, I think it's a safe place. I haven't felt this safe in all the houses, but as I say, that little bit of angry bravado also makes me feel safer. Yeah. Rather than, oh my god.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm like, okay, all right. I think acknowledging spirits is really important. You know, because a lot of the cases we go to, it's because the spirits aren't being acknowledged and they're getting louder and more noisy, and it's just family generally saying hi, but I'm going to say hi louder because everyone's ignoring them. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, but that doesn't explain anything of what you've had. So I'm curious to know where your story goes, really.
Yeah.
So guardian angels then, because this experience you had seemed to be a protective thing, right?
Yeah, most definitely. And I do, my mum's a real believer in guardian angels. And I do think me and my sisters, in particular my older sister, do think our nan is there, and along with my granddad now. But yeah, we think she's always been there, just guiding us a little,
Well, I have a collection of guardian angel stories from various people I spoke to while doing something about mediums, actually. And they all these stories were simply people walking up a street and saying, no, don't go that way.
Yeah.
And they've been quite scared by this stranger, so they've gone another way. And as you say, there's been a crash moments after. That person's nowhere to be seen. So that your story really chimes with me there.
Yeah. And I'm sure that it's happened on other occasions, but that's the one that really sticks with me, I think, because it's all tied in with the goblin and that period of, my first child. And yeah.
Now that sounds like a protective spirit for you in particular, at that time of having a child.
Yeah.
And through the Ouija board, if this piques your curiosity, we find that when you've had your 8 lives on Earth, because you reincarnate 7 times, so you've had 8 lives on Earth, and you've learned all you can learn, up there you can become a being of light. And those are the guardian angels who are then qualified enough to come down and mentor us, and like, and it's not necessarily a relative. You can pick and you'll be like, oh, I'll be that one. I'll look after those people.
Right. Well, and that's what you've picked up through the Ouija board.
Yeah, that's what they say. Obviously, I cannot quantify that in any way. I'm just telling you what they say.
Wow.
Very clearly. So until I learn something different, that's what I'm sticking with. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Sounds good.
But yeah, it sounds nice that if there's some, not necessarily God-related angelic beings, but we all understand when we say angels.
Yeah.
There's something out there. What is our protection, which is good, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think there is the reverse of that as well, which we would know as demons.
Yeah. Well, sorry, go on.
No, it's just I was just going to say, just not in that standard biblical sense. I just think that they're nasty and there's good.
Yeah. Well, you're probably unaware that Lucy and I of our team, we did a night where we did some rituals and tried to summon things to.
I think you did say, you briefly mentioned it on your voice message. Yeah.
So we seem to successfully do that, and I know Lucy got all the badness from that experience. No. Yeah, it really showed. I didn't get any side effect, but yeah. But then again, I did let her do most of the rituals. So.
Is it settled down now?
Yeah, it got cured by 2 spirits. Actually, got rid of the demons for us.
Right.
Allegedly.
Okay.
It's all invisible to us. Yeah. So that was weird. Whether that was true or not, I don't know. But yeah, there seems to be energies. I think that's the main thing. Like you say, I can create an energy by saying I really dislike Sarah. You know what I mean? And you pick up on that vibe. You're like, oh, he doesn't like me. That's a horrible. And you create that energy.
Kind of manifest it, don't you? Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and likewise, we used to go in and say, okay, spirits, if you can scratch us, 2 of us don't mind that. And now I understand. We've been taught by the spirits that's a bad intention in itself. Like I wouldn't come to your house and say, Sarah, feel free to punch me in the face. You'd be like, what?
Yeah, that makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah. So, yeah, my intent, although I don't mind if I get scratched, something would have to choose to do that to me. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
I'm just looking at evidence that is beyond the questionable. For myself, obviously, everybody else will say he did it to himself, but I'm not interested in that. I just want to learn myself,
for yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. So you already believe in spirit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you don't need convincing. Yeah.
No.
So
and I think even more so as I've gotten older, strangely enough, that there are so many coincidences,
Yeah.
So many, and in particular, as you know, my granddad passed away at the beginning of October, and just when my mum said that he is seeing his mum, and it started about a month before, and that's a known thing to happen to people, isn't it? Yeah.
Which makes sense, to be comforted
Yeah.
by a person. I don't fear death, to be
Mm.
absolutely honest. I mean, I know other people have had worse things than this, but in July I had gangrene in my appendix, and it was like,
Oh,
you're getting
nice.
poisoned, Chris. You're getting poisoned, possibly to death. And it was like, we
Yeah.
need to operate. And I started laying there in those 3 days in hospital thinking, well, actually, all my things are in order with my son.
Mm.
And I thought, I'm actually not afraid of death, because I've talked to enough spirits that I'm like, sounds all right. It's meant to be bliss when you die, for a start. and and it was just, I thought, hey, that's a big deal, that, because as a kid I wasn't all right with dying.
No, nor me. I've become the same as I've gotten older. I was petrified of it, really. I'm a bit preoccupied with it.
Yeah.
But I'm less so now. It's natural. It's a natural course of things, and it's going to happen at some point.
Yeah. What do you think about previous lives?
I do believe in reincarnation. Yeah.
Do you think you have any, what do I normally call them? I normally call them stains. Do you think you have any stains? Do you have any things that you're like, I wonder where that comes from?
Yeah, definitely. And I was thinking about that the other day. And they're just, and it's a strange one, like with certain people, when you can get this very deep repulsion.
Yeah.
And it's not because of the way they look or the way they're acting. There's something in to the core of you that is like that energy.
Yeah.
It's like you remember it from somewhere, and it's really unpleasant. I do believe in reincarnation. I think there is an element of memories being passed down through generations, as well. And I think that we do tend to circulate around the same energies. Not necessarily your mum would be your mum again, but I think they congregate the energies together.
Yeah, that does seem to be what I'm starting to believe, that I've met people who I'm like, I know you. And I've always known you. As soon as I see them, I'm like, I have history with you, but not on this life.
Yeah.
And like you say, some people, you just instantly don't like them for no good reason. But yeah, I was talking about stains. Like I have a certain thing. If I look at even photographs of deep ocean, it just brings back a traumatic memory that isn't. And I'm saying, did I drown?
I have that with a pond. like when you get all of the algae and stuff on top, and the lily pads.
Yeah.
And especially if it's by a cornfield, I get that. So I know exactly that feeling you mean, and it's like, something happened.
Responded. Yeah.
And you do get a real response to it.
Yeah. We have a teammate, Sue, and when she went to Egypt, she was like, I'm home. An overwhelming sense that that's where she belonged. So, it's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
And if we do come back, and if the spirits are right, and we do come back 8 times, I've had 8 lives from all over the world, it makes sense that things trigger. You're like, I used to live in this environment. Or by a pond in a cornfield. You know what I mean?
Yeah, this strange
Fascinating.
sense of deja vu. But
Yeah. So the future of your podcasts, what have you got planned coming up? Have you just got more research to do?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to do shadow people for the next one. I've got a few ones that I'm really looking forward to, actually, because I want to do a kind of Victorian type one around Christmas. So we're going to do Spring-Heeled Jack.
Yeah.
And, Krampus, I really want to cover Krampus. I love that story. I love folklore.
Yeah.
And I've come across a few true stories relating to Krampus. So
Yeah.
delve into that a bit.
Are there any like local things around where you are?
There are a few stories, and I've actually written up some stuff for Devon, where you get the knockers, and that's a bit dodgy. Like the Tobie knockers, and some, and Kitty J and stuff like that. So I want to cover a bit more, like local hauntings and folklore and stuff. Yeah, but the world is my oyster because we're brand new. There's so much out there.
Yeah, I'm glad you're enjoying it.
Yeah, it's good fun.
Yeah, it's great that you do it with Tobie.
Yeah.
So, yeah, well, thank you for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me, Chris.
No worries, no worries. And I hope my listeners come over and check out your podcast.
Oh, thank you.
All right, I'll talk to you later then, Sarah.
Dear, take care.
Bye.
See you later. Bye. Bye.